Australia needs its history to be shown out there to the public. That's what we need. We need Australian history to be appreciated by Australians. "40 years ago, I was doing a scrounge down in South Gippsland, Druin South, and there was one of the three brothers that bought a lot of tanks after the war. They were converting them into tractors and earth-moving machines, and he had a farm at Topiram, and I went down and had a look, and there were tanks galore. Oh, you know, there were Stuarts, Grants, Matildas, probably about a dozen tanks altogether. But for this particular subject at the moment, the bones of the first Australian tank was lying out there in the paddock just below the cow bale, and it looked to me like it was worth saving. But anyway, I bought a Stuart first, and then I thought, oh, look, this, I didn't understand its history at that stage, so yeah, all right, I think I'll drag it home. So I dragged it home. I think I was 92 when I started. and when I started, there were no tracks on it, no sprockets, only one final drive. But I'd already received Mike Cecil's book on the Aussie Cruiser, and it gave me new enthusiasm to do something about this whole thing out the back. And then I realised that I had the number one tank, the first Aussie tank that was ever built. You know, they started building that early 1941, and by halfway through the year they'd managed to cast up the hull in 6 pieces. By October 41, while they were assembling these 6 pieces up, which they had to machine and drill, and they had enough confidence and skill to cast a hull in 1 piece. And this is, as far as the Allies go, this was an absolute first. The Allies could cast a turret, that's all they could cast. If they wanted to build a tank, they'd start off with armour plate, inch and a half armour plate, drill holes in it and rivet it together like they used to build ships. We were the first. Here in Sydney, the engineers there were the first to be able to build a 28-ton tank, which was a medium-sized tank, cast a hull in 1 piece. And you know, I'd like to present this tank that I have here as the beginning of that marvellous story. The tank needed another final drive, and I found a housing, put all the gears and stuff in it, beautiful gears, beautiful machining and stuff, all straight cut teeth, not double herringbone like the Yankee ones, because we didn't have that complicated gear cutting ability. We can only do straight cut, which makes the tank noisy inside, but that's another problem. So I did this Butte restoration, this final drive, offered it up to the axle housing, and 2/3 of the holes were half a hole out. Half a hole out. And unfortunately it was a heavy duty housing. The holes in the housing are 3 inches long. So I couldn't elongate them So I'd hunt around and I found another housing, one of the early housings, where the flange was only about an inch thick, and I was able to get the gas axe out, elongate 2/3 of the holes. So if you have a look at E1 now on the right-hand side, now the final drive was bolted on with big washers, and the big washers to cover up the... But it was a prototype, and so they obviously hadn't made up machining jigs so that everything was the same. Anyway, I was lucky I had a full set of sprockets, full set of tracks. The trouble is the tracks were being rolled up, I guess about 50 years ago, into 6 rolls, 1 metre in diameter. But they'd rusted solid. So that was a fairly difficult job. But I like a challenge like that. We chained the one end of the long end of the track to an axle housing that I had lying around, which was actually number 8001. Chained that to the auto car, and then got the fork on the other end, and I unrolled the steel track, and it was all lumpy. I put the wrecker on it with Dave McCullum driving it, but it still didn't straighten the kinks out. So I had to set up the porta power, 4 bits of chain over the porta power, and luckily I had a power pack. I did that over 100 times to straighten all the bits that were up like that, and then I had to turn it upside down because all the bits that were down, then they were sticking up. And my workshop, there's a story there with no words. It's a wheelbarrow, chock-a-block full of empty cans of WD-40. I had to start thinking outside my square. And I went to see Ewan, a good friend of mine, and he suggested JP from JP Marine Industries, who makes marvellous yachts, and he's a boatman, but expert fiberglass.
Straight away, it's like, yeah, we can certainly do that.
And I wasn't that keen on a fiberglass tank, but the facilities required to make a cast steel tank top is just too big. It's too big a job. The fiberglass one, any casting, you have to make moulds first. You know, you've got to pour that liquid into something that holds it until it sets. Even with a fiberglass, which is only sheeting, you've still got to make a mould, and so they use 3D printing. 3D printing, and once again, I used Mike Cecil's book. It had lots of beaut photos in it.
I spent a lot of time reading Mike Cecil's book, and also Jason from up at Cairns, his book. I bought a copy of his book. Just studying the photographs, getting my head around it, coming out here, measuring the hull, getting that as close as we could. You know, there's a few little things here and there, but just getting all that side of it. We got the pattern makers involved. They came out here as well. They were able to measure it up, and then we were able to convert it into a 3-dimensional model on a computer.
They've got special machines. I don't understand much of it. Eventually, you get a big chunk of plastic, and they cut it roughly to shape, then put it in this huge machine, and there's a high-speed end mill running off information being fed into it by this mysterious 3D thing, and it machines the mould exactly the right size to cast up the turret, the driver's compartment, the turret compartment, and the rear engine deck.
One of the companies I work with, they make life-size animatronic dinosaurs, and they have some very clever people there, sculptors and artists. So I was able to utilise that resource and have one of their artists come out and apply the texture to the relatively smooth fiberglass finish to recreate as close as we could that cast steel finish. And I think she's done a pretty remarkable job, actually. I made a big steel base that recreated or resembled the footprint of the hull, as close as we could, within a couple of millimetres of that measurement of the footprint on the hull, so that we were able to set up each individual component of the deck in the right spot and then set it all up and make sure it all fitted and that we were happy that it all fitted. So when we came out here with the thing on the trailer, we knew it was, without too much messing around, it was going to drop pretty much straight on, and it ended up, we weren't far off. So there was a couple little measurements. I was like, oh, yeah, but I think we were 5 millimetres out. So that's pretty good.
It's all done sort of by magic. I mean, a lot of modern people understand that, but the result is pretty good. It had to be modified a couple of times, but JP very good at that. He's a magician.
At the end of the day, it's a model. It's made from plywood, fiberglass, steel, aluminium, plastic, all sorts of stuff to be able to try and recreate it.
I had pretty much confidence in JP. I'd sort of checked it a bit, several visits down there, and when the thing eventually arrived, see the bottom half of the hull is cast in 3 pieces, and the original top was cast in 3 pieces. So we only brought down the top 3 pieces, and they had to fit on the bottom original cast steel pieces. That's the 2 sides of the hull and the rear of the hull. Well, everything fitted exact. I mean, there's a bit of come and go in some of the holes, but I used 3/4 inch bolts all the way. There's about 30 bolts. I had to climb inside the thing and bolt it all together. Very satisfying for everything to fit nicely. He's a very good engineer, very good boat builder, whatever. So I'm happy with the results.
John's been actually really good. He comes in a bit gruff sometimes, but at the end of the day, this is, him. It's his vision that was brought this about, and him trying to save a piece of history. So without him, stuff like this doesn't happen. And without people like John, things like this don't happen. So, all kudos to John. It wasn't a cheap project. There's a lot of man hours in it. There's a lot of design work, machining work with the CNC machines, cutting moulds and all that sort of stuff. It's a big project. And I was actually thinking about this the other day. There's probably about 20 people involved behind the scenes in different stages of doing stuff. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that have had a hand in it somewhere along the line, whether it's a supplier or a CNC guy or a designer or an artist, or it wasn't just me by myself.
It's an empty hull, yeah. I mean, the next generation, next dozen generations, the next 100 generations, if you like, if somebody wants to power it up with 3 Cadillac engines, they can go to Puckapunyal and they've got AC1 number 30, I think it is, and they've just reconditioned the inside of it with the 3 Cadillac engines, and they'd be able to supply photos and drawings.
It's only when you get to sit back at the end of the job and take a step back and look at it and you go, yeah, I'm actually quite proud of that. Yeah, I feel that gives me personal satisfaction. to say, yep, I've been able to do that.
And it's the first time that thing's moved in 83 years. I've enjoyed saving all that Aussie stuff, and you know, if you want to read the Tank Museum, the Melbourne Tank Museum history, yeah, I saved 120 items, and yeah, I'm happy with that. The younger generation, yeah, they've got a challenge because what's left needs a lot of work. Good luck.